The plasma containment field hummed between them, a barrier of crimson light separating two warriors locked in a dance of death. Obi-Wan Kenobi's chest heaved with exertion, his blue lightsaber trembling slightly in his grip as he stared across the impossible divide at the creature who had murdered his master. Darth Maul stood perfectly still, his yellow eyes burning with malicious anticipation, that double-bladed weapon held almost casually at his side. The reactor shaft of the Theed power generator stretched infinitely below them, a mechanical abyss that cared nothing for Jedi or Sith. This was the moment. The field would drop in seconds. "You cannot win, Maul." "Your master couldn't. Why would you?" The containment field flickered, dropped. Obi-Wan launched himself forward with everything the Force could give him, his blade already sweeping in a desperate overhead strike. But Maul had been ready. Of course he had been ready. The Zabrak moved like liquid shadow, his double blade spinning in a defensive arc that caught Obi-Wan's attack with contemptuous ease. For a moment, just a moment, the young Jedi thought he might actually do it. Then Maul smiled. The Sith's counterattack came with surgical precision, and suddenly Obi-Wan found himself being driven backward toward the shaft's edge. A feint, a strike under his guard. Searing pain exploded across his side. "At least, I tried." Maul's blade punched through his chest. Obi-Wan Kenobi's body tumbled into the infinite depths, following Qui-Gon's lightsaber into darkness. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you're enjoying this content so far, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch these videos without subscribing. Imagine what we could accomplish if everyone subscribed. We thank you all for your continued support. The Jedi Council chamber on Coruscant felt colder than usual. Yoda sat in his chair, his ancient eyes half closed, but Mace Windu knew the Grandmaster wasn't sleeping. He was listening to the Force, trying to make sense of a tragedy that made no sense at all. Two Jedi Masters, dead. Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi, cut down by a Sith warrior who had simply vanished into the chaos of Naboo's liberation. Queen Amidala's forces had found no trace of him. Neither had Republic intelligence. Neither had the Jedi themselves. The boy. What do we do about Qui-Gon's discovery? Too old he is. Too much fear. Too much anger. Anakin Skywalker, 9 years old, freed from slavery, brought to the temple with promises of training and purpose. Qui-Gon's dying declaration that he was the chosen one still hung over them all like a storm that hadn't yet decided whether to break. Without Qui-Gon's steadying presence, without Obi-Wan to honor that promise, the boy was a risk they couldn't afford. Not now. Not with a Sith Lord loose in the galaxy. They had all sensed it, that volcanic well of emotion in the boy's heart. Fear, anger, attachment, love. Everything a Jedi was taught to release into the Force. We send him to Naboo. Queen Amidala has offered him a position in her service. So Anakin Skywalker, the chosen one, was sent away. Given a comfortable life, yes. Given education and opportunity and even a small stipend. But not given the one thing Qui-Gon had promised him, the chance to become what he was meant to be. On the industrial nightmare of Lotho Minor, amid the scrap and smoke and suffering, Darth Maul clung to existence through hatred alone. His wounds from Naboo had never properly healed, or rather they had healed wrong, leaving him scarred and weakened. But weakness was just another form of motivation. He wasn't alone, exactly. The bounty hunters and smugglers he'd once worked with, the criminal networks that operated in the Republic's shadows, they owed him debts. And Maul was very good at collecting debts. Slowly, painfully, he rebuilt himself. Not his body, that was beyond even the dark side's power, but his will, his purpose, and he thought about the boy. The chosen one. They fear him. Fear what he could become. Holocrons stolen from Sith tombs. Fragments of prophecy recovered from dead worlds. All of them spoke of the chosen one in ridiculously vague terms, as prophecies always did. The Jedi thought it meant destroying the Sith. His master, Sidious, probably thought it meant destroying the Jedi. Maul, lying in the dark and remembering what it felt like to be nothing more than a weapon, began to wonder if it meant destroying both. The Force showed him visions sometimes. Whether they were true glimpses of the future or just fever dreams, he couldn't say, but in them he saw the boy, older, powerful, conflicted, standing at a crossroads with three paths before him, the rigid dogma of the Jedi, the consuming darkness of the Sith, or something else. Freedom. Tatooine hadn't changed. It never did. Maul stood in the small home on the edge of Maz Espa, watching the woman called Shmi Skywalker move through her evening routine with the quiet grace of someone who had known suffering and survived it. She was free now. The bounty Qui-Gon had arranged had seen to that. But she had chosen to remain on Tatooine, unable to leave the only world she'd ever known despite its cruelties. She still lived in fear, still wondered about her son, who she'd sent away to a better life without fully understanding what that life would be. "You're here about Anakin. Maul stiffened. He'd hidden his presence in the Force, blended into the shadows. How had she known? A mother knows, he realized. She finally faced him, her eyes widening slightly when she saw his Zabrak features, the red and black tattoos, but she didn't scream, didn't run, just watched him with that same quiet strength that had raised the Chosen One in slavery without breaking. The Jedi rejected your son. They fear his power. I can train him properly, not as a weapon, but as what he truly is. If you hurt him, there's no corner of the galaxy where you'll be safe from me. Maul actually smiled at that. The silence stretched between them as the twin suns set outside, painting the desert in shades of blood and gold. Somewhere in the distance, a krayt dragon called out, its cry echoing across the wastes. An understanding passed between them. Not trust, perhaps, but recognition of shared purpose. The message reached Anakin on Naboo 3 weeks later, encoded in frequencies only someone with his technical skill could detect. His mother's voice, reading words she clearly didn't believe but had been convinced to say. He stood in his small apartment overlooking Theed's waterfalls, listening to the transmission for the third time. 14 years old now, tall for his age, working in the Queen's motor pool fixing speeders and starships. A comfortable life, a safe life, but not the life Qui-Gon had promised him, not the destiny he'd felt burning in his chest since childhood. There's someone who wants to train you, someone who sees your potential. Come home. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Anakin had spent 5 years on Naboo, growing stronger in ways the Jedi would never measure. His connection to the Force hadn't diminished with neglect. If anything, it had grown wilder, less controlled. He could feel machinery through the Force now, understand its patterns and rhythms as easily as breathing. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. The rejection by the Jedi Council still burned in his memory, their voices echoing. Too old, too dangerous, too much fear. They'd been right about the fear, at least. Fear of being ordinary. Fear of wasting the potential everyone said he had. I'm coming home, Mom. He packed that night. Queen Amidala's staff barely noticed his departure, just another talented mechanic moving on. But Padme Amidala herself noticed. The young senator watched from her office window as Anakin's transport lifted off, heading toward the Outer Rim. She had always sensed something different about him. The training began in the deep desert, far from prying eyes. Maul had chosen his approach carefully, no talk of Sith or Jedi, not at first. Just power, control, freedom. He taught Anakin that the Force wasn't something to be feared or suppressed, but embraced. That anger, channeled properly, could be a tool rather than a weakness. The boy was powerful, more powerful than Maul had imagined. His connection to the Force was like staring into a binary star system. Beautiful, dangerous, impossible to look away from. And he learned fast. Too fast. Within months, Anakin was executing lightsaber techniques that took most apprentices years to master. The Jedi teach you to release your emotions into the Force, as if emotions were poison. But what gave you strength to win that pod race? Logic? Serenity? No, I was angry. At Sebulba, at everyone who said I couldn't do it. Form V, the way of the krayt dragon. Aggressive, direct, overwhelming, suited him perfectly. But Maul was careful. He'd learned from watching Sidious manipulate him for decades. Anakin wasn't going to be a weapon, wasn't going to be a slave to the dark side. He would be something different, something better. 3 years passed in the crucible of the desert. Anakin grew tall and lean, his skills honed to a razor's edge. But there were moments that troubled Maul. Moments when Anakin's finger crossed the line from controlled to consuming. Power without purpose destroys everything it touches. I learned that lesson slowly and painfully. The training continued, but Maul began to understand. The hardest lesson wouldn't be teaching Anakin to embrace his emotions, it would be teaching him not to be consumed by them. The Clone Wars erupted across the galaxy when Anakin was 19, and suddenly their isolated existence in the Outer Rim became impossible to maintain. The galaxy had split into two massive factions, the Republic under Palpatine's increasing authoritarian rule, and the Separatists led by Count Dooku, a fallen Jedi who had taken the name Darth Tyrannus. Maul recognized his former master's hand in all of it, recognized the careful manipulation that had led the galaxy to tear itself apart. They watched the HoloNet feeds from their hidden base on Mustafar. The volcanic planet was perfect for hiding. The dark side energies here masked their presence from both Jedi and Sith. We have to choose a side. People are dying. This war isn't about ideology. Sidious, my former master, orchestrated this entire conflict. The Supreme Chancellor of the Republic is a Sith Lord. The revelation hit Anakin like a physical blow. Palpatine, the grandfatherly politician who had befriended Queen Amidala years ago, who had seemed to genuinely care about Naboo's people. He was Darth Sidious? The architect of a galactic war? Maul explained his years of observation, the patterns he'd seen in the Force. how Sidious played both sides, using the Jedi as a personal army while simultaneously funding their destruction. The boy wanted to warn someone, to expose the conspiracy, but who would believe them? A Zabrak with Sith tattoos and a teenager the Jedi had rejected? Then we build our own network. We fight our own war. They started small, bounty hunters and smugglers who owed Maul favors, but it grew. The Shadows, they called themselves, warriors who served neither the light nor the dark, but the living force itself. Padme Amidala re-entered Anakin's life through chance, or perhaps the force itself. The senator from Naboo had been investigating corruption in the Senate when her ship was attacked by separatist forces. Her escape pod crashed on Mustafar, where the Shadows found her. She was older than Anakin remembered, more careworn, but still possessed of that unshakable realism that had driven her to become queen at 14. When she finally met him at their base, recognition flickered in her eyes. "You're the boy from Naboo, the one Qui-Gon tried to train. I'm the one the Jedi rejected, but yes." They talked for hours, into days. Padme spoke of the Republic's decay, how Palpatine had slowly accumulated emergency powers until the Senate had become little more than a rubber stamp. Anakin told her about Maul's theory, about Sidious and the manipulation of the Clone Wars, and slowly, despite every logical reason not to, they began to trust each other. Maul watched this development with mixed feelings. The woman was making Anakin softer, more compassionate. That was good. He'd worried about the boy's capacity for cruelty, but she was also a reminder of all the things Anakin had lost. A normal life, a place in the Republic, the chance to be a hero in the conventional sense. You love her, and she reminds you that there's more to power than destruction. Good, hold on to that. When Padme returned to Coruscant with information they'd gathered, Anakin watched her ship disappear into the stars. Something had changed in him. The anger that had driven him for years felt different now. Still there, but tempered with something else. Hope, perhaps, or purpose beyond vengeance. The revelation came during an assault on a separatist stronghold. Anakin had led a strike team to rescue hostages when they encountered someone unexpected. Ahsoka Tano, the young Togruta woman, fought with 2 white lightsabers, her Sheen-style technique flawless as she cut through droids with mechanical efficiency. She'd left the Jedi Order after discovering the depths of corruption within the Council, after seeing how they'd become pawns in Palpatine's game. Now she operated alone, a wandering knight trying to protect civilians in a war that cared nothing for them. She and Anakin fought side by side against General Grievous's guards, and in that battle, something clicked. You're strong in the Force, stronger than anyone I've sensed except Master Yoda, but there's darkness in you. There's darkness in everyone. The question is what you do with it. Maul appeared from the shadows then, and Ahsoka's sabers ignited instantly. The duel that erupted was inevitable. Ahsoka, righteous and convinced she was saving Anakin from corruption. Maul, defensive and protective of the apprentice who had become more than a student. And Anakin himself, caught between 2 worldviews. The desert sand exploded around them as Force and Blade clashed, but in the end, it was Anakin who stopped the fight, not with words, but with power. A force wave that sent both combatants stumbling backward. Enough! Ahsoka, Maul trained me because the Jedi were too afraid to, and Maul, she's not your enemy, she's what the Jedi should have been. The silence that followed was profound. Slowly, painfully, Maul deactivated his lightsaber. Ahsoka stared at them both. Then her white blades extinguished as well. An alliance was born in that moment. Fragile, uncertain, but real. Order 66 was transmitted. Across the galaxy, clone troopers turned on their Jedi commanders. The Jedi Temple burned. Within hours, the Jedi Order ceased to exist. But when Sidious revealed himself in the Senate, declaring the birth of the Galactic Empire, 3 figures stood waiting in the rotunda. Ahsoka Tano, Darth Maul, and the Chosen One himself. The battle that followed was beyond description. Sidious, the most powerful Sith Lord in the Millennium, his mastery of the dark side absolute. Maul, fueled by decades of hatred and the knowledge that this confrontation had always been inevitable. Ahsoka, fighting with the calm precision of someone who had found peace outside the Jedi Order. My former apprentice, how disappointing that you've wasted these years in such a futile quest. I brought you nothing except your end. And Anakin fought with everything. The light side and the dark. The compassion Padme had reignited in him, and the fury that had driven him since childhood. She was the storm at the center of the Force, pulling power from sources both Jedi and Sith would have considered forbidden. Maul fell first, his body broken by Sidious's lightning, collapsing to the marble floor. His eyes found Anakin's one final time. You must be more than a Sith. You must be free. Ahsoka fell moments later, protecting Anakin from a death blow, her white lightsabers clattering beside Maul. Then it was just Anakin and Sidious, master manipulator and the weapon forged in rejection and pain. The Senate building collapsed around them as Anakin struck the final blow, not from hatred, but from necessity. Sidious's body tumbled into the ruins, his lifetime of schemes dying with him. Anakin stood alone in the rubble, holding Ahsoka's dying form, feeling Maul's presence fade. The galaxy was free, but free didn't mean whole. 15 years later, the Cantina on Lothal was exactly the kind of place where questions didn't get asked. Ahsoka Tano, older now, scarred but alive, having survived through sheer will and Anakin's desperate force healing in those final moments, sat in a corner booth, nursing a drink and watching the door. She'd heard the rumors, the Shadow Knight they called him, a wanderer who appeared on the Outer Rim, helping those who couldn't help themselves, wielding a lightsaber that somehow contained both red and blue crystals, a physical manifestation of the impossible balance he'd achieved. When Anakin Skywalker finally walked through that door, he looked nothing like the angry boy she'd first met. There was a peace in his eyes now. Hard-won, tentative, but real. "Hello, Ahsoka. I was wondering when you'd stop running." "I'm not running. I'm looking. For students. The galaxy needs something different now. Guardians who understand that the Force isn't about suppressing emotion or indulging in it. It's about balance. A new order, or maybe just a new path." Ahsoka considered for a long moment, thinking of everything they'd lost. Everyone who had died to bring them to this moment. Maul's sacrifice, the Jedi's failure, Sidious's fall, all of it leading here, to a cantina on a backwater world where two survivors could finally breathe freely. She raised her glass, and Anakin raised his own to meet it. Outside, in the Lothal sunset, the Force itself seemed to hum with approval. This was the destiny the Chosen One had been meant for all along. Not to destroy the darkness or champion the light, but to show the galaxy that both could coexist. That peace wasn't found in victory, but in understanding. The war was over. The real work could finally begin. If you enjoyed this journey into the shadows of what might have been, remember to hit that subscribe button and join us for more explorations of the infinite possibilities within that galaxy far, far away. May the Force be with you, always.